Look closely at this ancient cave painting a swirling mass of figures with elongated limbs and strange, otherworldly heads. They tower over human forms, their presence inexplicable, haunting. What does it mean? For centuries, art historians chalked it up to symbolism or the vivid imagination of our ancestors. But what if these weren't just creative expressions? What if these cryptic images were attempts to document something far more extraordinary, something not of this world? From the haunting frescoes of prehistoric caves to the intricate carvings on temple walls, humanity's oldest artworks might be hiding clues to encounters we've barely begun to understand. Think about it. Why do so many ancient cultures, separated by vast oceans and thousands of years, depict eerily similar figures with traits that defy natural human anatomy? Giant beings with elongated skulls, eyes wide and dark, hovering in the skies or descending in celestial chariots. The Dogon people of Africa spoke of amphibious gods from the stars, while the Sumerians carved tales of the Anunnaki, celestial beings who bestowed knowledge upon humanity. The Aztecs, the Egyptians, even the Aboriginal Australians each preserved stories and images so strikingly alike that coincidence seems impossible. Were they all just weaving myths, or were they trying to preserve something real, something beyond our comprehension? This is the mystery we're diving into today. Across continents and millennia, a pattern emerges, one that challenges everything we think we know about our past. Could these artworks be fragments of a larger truth, forgotten records of visitors from beyond our world? We'll examine the evidence, from the strange metallic figures hidden in Renaissance paintings to the baffling hieroglyphs deep inside Egyptian tombs that resemble modern-day spacecraft. Some of these details were dismissed as artistic license, but what if the artists were painstakingly accurate? What if they were warning us, or perhaps preparing us, for a reality far stranger than we've dared to imagine? Strap in, because history, as it turns out, might be far more incredible than we've been taught. Take the Wandjina figures of Australia's Kimberley region, painted in ochre and white, their faces eerily smooth, their eyes dark and oversized, often surrounded by halos that shimmer like a force field. Aboriginal elders say these spirits brought the rains, descending from the sky in a time they call the dreaming. But look closer, no mouths, elongated heads, bodies that seem to glow. Doesn't it sound familiar? Halfway across the world, in the Algerian desert, the Tassili caves hide paintings just as unsettling. Tall, helmeted figures with round, hollow eyes stand among herds of animals, some holding what appear to be tools or weapons. Locals call them the Tassili aliens, but archaeologists label them as shamanic visions. Yet when you place these images side by side, Wandjina, Tassili, even the star beings described in Native American petroglyphs, the similarities are too glaring to ignore. Then there's the case of the ancient Indian vimanas, flying chariots described in texts like the Mahabharata, complete with detailed accounts of aerial battles and weapons that sound unnervingly like modern explosives. Carvings in temples like the 1,000-year-old Shivapur show figures piloting disc-shaped vehicles, their design shockingly close to the saucers we associate with UFO sightings today. Coincidence, or could these be blueprints of something far older, far more advanced than we've credited? Even medieval art isn't immune. The 15th century painting, the Madonna with Saint Giovannino, shows a mysterious hovering object in the sky, its details meticulously rendered, a glowing disc with a distinct metallic sheen. In the corner, a man shields his eyes, staring up in what can only be described as awe. What's striking isn't just the persistence of these motifs, but the precision. These artists weren't scribbling doodles, they were documenting. The Mayan sarcophagus lid of Palenque shows King Pakal in what seems to be a cockpit, surrounded by machinery, his hand on controls. To some, it's a symbolic journey to the underworld. To others, it's a pilot at the helm of a vessel. And that's the heart of the debate. Were our ancestors translating the inexplicable into the only language they had: myth, symbol, art? Or were they leaving us breadcrumbs, a trail of evidence etched in stone and pigment? The deeper you dig, the harder it becomes to dismiss it all as imagination. After all, why would cultures with no contact spanning millennia all point to the same impossible sky? Now, let's turn our attention to the Nazca Lines, those massive, enigmatic drawings etched into the Peruvian desert over 2,000 years ago. Stretching for miles across the arid landscape, these geoglyphs depict everything from spiders and hummingbirds to geometric patterns so precise they can only be fully appreciated from the air. But here's the question that's puzzled researchers for decades. Why would an ancient civilization create art that's invisible from the ground? Some theorists argue the Nazca Lines weren't meant for human eyes at all. Instead, they propose these vast designs served as landing strips or navigational markers for extraterrestrial visitors. The sheer scale, the straight lines running for miles without deviation, the intricate shapes that mirror modern airport runways, could these be more than coincidence? Swiss author Erich von Däniken famously suggested that the Nazca Plateau was a kind of interstellar welcome mat, a signal to beings from the stars, and it's hard not to wonder, how else could a pre-industrial society conceive of such precise, massive designs without some kind of aerial guidance? But mainstream archaeology offers a different perspective. Researchers point to the deep spiritual significance these geoglyphs held for the Nazca people. Many of the animal figures align with constellations or seasonal cycles, suggesting they were part of ritual ceremonies to summon rain or honor deities. The straight lines, they might have been sacred pathways walked by priests during religious rites, and the fact that they're best seen from above, that could simply be a byproduct of their creation, not their purpose. After all, the Nazca culture left no records of flight, so why assume these lines were meant for the sky? Yet the mystery deepens when you consider the sheer engineering prowess required. Without modern tools, how did they achieve such flawless symmetry? Some experiments have shown that simple surveying techniques using stakes and ropes could replicate the designs, but the precision still boggles the mind. And then there are the less discussed details, like the Pampa de Jamuno's bizarre astronaut figure, a humanoid with wide, round eyes seemingly waving from the hillside. Is it a shaman in ritual garb, as scholars suggest, or something far more cryptic? Perhaps the most compelling argument lies in the patterns themselves. While some geoglyphs clearly represent animals or plants, others are abstract grids, spirals, and trapezoid shapes that don't easily fit into either the ritual or the extraterrestrial theory. Maybe the truth is somewhere in between. Could the Nazca Lines be a blend of sacred art and celestial homage, a bridge between earth and sky? Whether they were meant for gods, aliens, or simply the cosmos above, one thing's certain: these desert canvases hold secrets we're still unraveling. And that's the thrill of this mystery sometimes. The most profound answers lie just beyond our reach. Deep inside the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, a series of carvings flicker in the torchlight, strange, bulb-like objects with coiled serpents inside, linked by cables to what seem like priests holding them aloft. To modern eyes, they look like ancient light bulbs, complete with filaments and sockets. Could this be proof that the Egyptians had access to electricity thousands of years before its official discovery? Or is there another explanation hiding in the shadows? Mainstream Egyptologists argue these carvings depict nothing more than symbolic imagery, likely a ritualistic representation of the sun god's journey through the underworld, with the snake-filled bulbs illustrating the rebirth of divine light. The so-called cables, just stylized lotus stems, a common motif in Egyptian art. And yet, when you compare these carvings to later discoveries like the Baghdad Battery, a 2,000-year-old clay jar that some believe functioned as a primitive voltaic cell, it's hard not to wonder. If one ancient culture stumbled upon rudimentary electricity, why not another? Then there's the infamous helicopter hieroglyph from the Temple of Seti I at Abydos. At first glance, the overlapping carvings appear to show modern machinery, a helicopter, a submarine, even a futuristic aircraft. But archaeologists have a different take. It's a case of palimpsest where later carvings were etched over older ones, creating accidental illusions. The original hieroglyphs, they say, were titles of Pharaoh Seti, eroded and rewritten over time. Yet the precision of these overlapping shapes still raises eyebrows. How could erosion produce such uncanny resemblances to 20th century technology? Skeptics point out that human brains are wired to seek familiar patterns, a phenomenon called pareidolia, where we see faces in clouds or animals in rock formations. But what if our ancestors weren't just imagining? Some researchers point to the Edfu texts, which describe celestial beings arriving in skyboats, bringing knowledge to early Egyptians. Pair that with the precision of pyramid construction, the mathematical alignment of the Giza complex with Orion's belt, and suddenly, the lightbulb theory doesn't seem so far-fetched. The debate boils down to perspective. Are we projecting our modern worldview onto ancient symbols, or are we finally deciphering a message left in plain sight? Either way, these carvings challenge us to reconsider what we think we know about history's greatest civilization. And that's the real spark, not just whether they had light bulbs, but how much more of their story remains hidden in plain sight. Buried in the ruins of ancient Mesopotamia, tiny stone cylinders no larger than a human finger hold images that defy easy explanation. These Sumerian cylinder seals, used to roll impressions onto clay tablets, depict scenes that seem ripped from modern science fiction figures clad in intricate, helmet-like headgear, holding objects resembling high-tech tools or weaponry, standing alongside symbols that look eerily like celestial maps. To the untrained eye, they might pass as mythological scenes, but look closer. Why do these gods, if that's what they truly are, wear what appear to be breathing apparatuses? Why do some grip devices that resemble modern-day control panels, their hands poised as if adjusting unseen machinery? Enter Zecharia Sitchin, the controversial scholar who spent decades arguing that these weren't mere deities, but extraterrestrial visitors, the Anunnaki, described in Sumerian texts as beings who descended from the heavens. According to Sitchin, the seals depict advanced technology, from what could be wristwatches to handheld communication devices, evidence of a forgotten interstellar encounter. The most striking example, the so-called Baghdad Battery seal, which shows a figure holding a cylindrical object spouting tendrils of energy, flanked by what might be conduits or cables. Skeptics dismiss it as a stylized scepter or symbolic lightning, but the parallels to modern electrical equipment are hard to ignore, yet mainstream archaeology offers a different lens. These helmets, experts argue, are royal crowns or ritual headdresses, their elaborate designs reflecting status, not functionality. The tools could be agricultural implements or ceremonial objects, their forms exaggerated for artistic emphasis. And the Anunnaki, they fit neatly into Mesopotamia's rich pantheon deities who governed natural forces, not literal astronauts. But here's the catch. Sumerian texts describe the Anunnaki arriving from a planet called Nibiru, a world with an elongated orbit that brings it near Earth every 3,600 years. They speak of these beings genetically engineering humanity, imparting knowledge of astronomy, agriculture, even law. If these accounts were purely symbolic, why include such precise, almost technical details? Compare these seals to similar artifacts halfway across the world. In Mesoamerica, the Maya carved images of Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, descending from the sky in a beam of light. In India, Vedic texts describe vimanas, flying chariots piloted by gods. The consistency is unsettling. Could the Sumerians, like so many other ancient cultures, have been documenting something beyond myth? Or were they simply weaving metaphors for natural phenomena, their gods representing cosmic forces like storms or fertility? the truth might lie in the gaps between these interpretations. Perhaps the Anunnaki were neither literal aliens nor pure symbolism, but a bridge between the two, a way for early humans to process encounters with advanced but entirely earthly civilizations now lost to time. Or maybe, just maybe, the cylinder seals are exactly what they appear to be, snapshots of a reality we're only beginning to comprehend. After all, when cultures separated by millennia and continents all point to the sky, it's worth asking, what were they really trying to tell us? In the remote cliffs of Mali, the Dogon people have preserved a secret for generations, a secret written in the stars. Their intricate carvings and oral traditions speak of the Sirius star system with a precision that baffles modern astronomers. They describe Sirius not as a single star, but as a binary system long before telescopes confirmed its companion, Sirius B, a dense white dwarf invisible to the naked eye. Even more astonishing, their legends detail the star's 50-year elliptical orbit and its incredibly heavy composition, facts science only uncovered in the 19th century. How could an isolated tribe with no apparent access to advanced technology possess such detailed cosmic knowledge? The Dogon's answer is as compelling as it is controversial. They claim this wisdom came from the Nomo, amphibious beings who descended from the sky in a spinning vessel, bringing civilization to humanity. These entities, depicted in Dogon art with elongated limbs and fish-like features, allegedly shared the secrets of the universe, secrets etched into ritual masks and passed down through carefully guarded initiation rites. To some, this echoes the familiar trope of ancient alien visitors, a theory popularized by researchers like Robert Temple in his book The Sirius Mystery. But mainstream anthropologists push back, arguing the Dogon's astronomical knowledge could have been influenced by contact with European visitors or absorbed from nearby cultures exposed to modern astronomy. Yet the timeline doesn't add up. French ethnographers recorded the Dogon's Sirius lore in the 1930s, decades before Sirius B's orbit was common knowledge. And while some suggest missionaries or colonial outsiders might have leaked the information, the Dogon's descriptions are too precise, too integrated into their spiritual practices, to be dismissed as mere contamination. Even more striking, their cosmology extends beyond Sirius. They speak of Saturn's rings, Jupiter's moons, and the spiral structure of the Milky Way, all without telescopic aid. So where does this leave us? One possibility is that the Dogon inherited fragments of a far older, now lost human civilization, one that achieved astronomical insights through methods we've yet to rediscover. Ancient cultures from Babylon to the Maya tracked celestial cycles with startling accuracy, suggesting a shared, perhaps forgotten, scientific tradition. Alternatively, could the Nomo represent something else entirely? Some researchers propose they were metaphorical figures, symbolizing the tribe's intuitive connection to the cosmos, a kind of ancestral memory encoded in myth. The truth may never be settled, but the Dogon's legacy forces us to reconsider the boundaries of ancient knowledge. Whether gifted by star travelers or born of human ingenuity, their story is a reminder that the past holds mysteries we're only beginning to unravel. And that's the real wonder, not just what they knew, but how much more might still be hidden in the art and oral traditions of cultures we've yet to fully understand. Buried beneath the towering pyramids of Palenque, the sarcophagus lid of Pakal the Great lies shrouded in mystery, a masterpiece of Mayan artistry that sparked debates for decades. At first glance, it appears to show the legendary ruler reclining against a backdrop of swirling symbols and cosmic imagery. But tilt your head, adjust your perspective, and the scene transforms. Pakal seems to lean forward, gripping what resemble controls, his body encased in what could be a cockpit surrounded by flames or exhaust. Beneath him, a twisting, serpentine structure evokes propulsion, while above, a stylized sun bursts with energy. To some, this isn't a funerary carving, it's a spaceship. The astronaut king theory gained traction in the 1960s when Russian researcher Alexander Kazantsev argued the lid depicted Pakal piloting a rocket, complete with guidance systems and thrust. The intricate details, the ruler's bent knees mimicking an astronaut's posture, the flames beneath the vessel, even the apparent headrest seemed to defy traditional interpretations. Mayan scholars, however, paint a different picture. They point to the lid's alignment with sacred texts like the Popol Vuh, which describes Pakal's descent into Xibalba, the underworld. The rocket could be the world tree, a spiritual axis connecting heavens, earth, and the afterlife. The controls ritual objects like the jester god headdress symbolizing kingship. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. Nearby, the Temple of the Inscriptions houses other carvings that echo this theme. One panel shows a figure crouched inside a segmented, capsule-like structure surrounded by celestial motifs. Another depicts a deity emerging from what looks like a smoking portal, his body framed by zigzagging lines resembling energy beams. Are these merely metaphors for divine journeys, or could they hint at something more tangible? Compare Pakal's lid to the infamous Tikal astronaut, a small, weathered carving from Guatemala's ancient city. The figure wears a tight-fitting helmet with pronounced goggles, his hands manipulating an array of buttons or levers. Mainstream archaeology labels it a shaman in ceremonial garb, yet the parallels to modern flight suits are uncanny. And then there's the Madrid Codex, a fragile Mayan manuscript filled with pages of deities operating strange, wheeled devices, objects conspicuously absent from Mayan daily life, given they never used the wheel for transportation. The debate hinges on context. The Maya were master astronomers, tracking Venus's cycles with pinpoint accuracy and aligning their cities to celestial events. Their art teems with cosmic symbolism, falling stars, eclipses, and gods riding across the sky. But does that mean they witnessed actual spacecraft, or were they simply translating the wonders of the universe into myth? Perhaps the answer lies in the middle. Pakal's sarcophagus might not show a literal rocket, but a visionary blend of science and spirituality, a king's journey through both cosmos and consciousness. After all, when art endures for over 1,000 years, maybe it's not about choosing between explanations, but recognizing how many truths a single image can hold. Ancient Sanskrit texts like the Mahabharata and Ramayana describe vimanas in astonishing detail, gleaming flying chariots capable of soaring through the heavens, maneuvering with precision, even engaging in aerial battles. These weren't crude depictions. The texts specify materials like mercury and silver, propulsion systems that emitted thunderous roars, and weapons that could level cities with bursts of light. One passage recounts a vimana shining like the sun, spinning like a whirlwind, leaving spectators awestruck as it vanished into the clouds. To modern ears, it sounds less like mythology and more like an eyewitness account of advanced technology. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. The Vaimanika Shastra, a 4th century text attributed to the sage Maharshi Bharadwaj, reads like an ancient flight manual. It outlines vimana construction, laying out designs for diamond-shaped aircraft with copper alloys, gyroscopic stabilizers, and energy sources called sun crystals. Skeptics argue the text was likely embellished over centuries or even influenced by early 20th century aviation concepts, but the parallels are hard to dismiss. Could this be evidence of lost technology, or were ancient scribes imagining the future with uncanny accuracy? Compare these descriptions to temple carvings across India. At the 12th century Hoyselswara temple, reliefs show figures inside circular, disc-like vehicles, their hands gripping levers surrounded by flame-like motifs. The 1,000-year-old Shivapur stone carvings depict similar scenes, pilots seated in domed crafts, some with what appear to be viewing ports or exhaust vents. Even more striking, the Jaina texts speak of Akasha yantras, sky-going machines used by celestial beings. The consistency across these sources raises a tantalizing question. Were vimanas purely symbolic, representing spiritual ascension, or were they grounded in something tangible? Mainstream scholars emphasize the allegorical nature of these accounts, pointing out how Hindu cosmology often blends science and metaphor. The god Agni's fiery chariot, for example, might symbolize lightning or celestial fire, not literal spacecraft. Yet the technical specifics, like the mention of mercury-based engines in the Samarangana Sutradhara, defy easy dismissal. Mercury propulsion, after all, is a real concept explored by modern aerospace engineers. And when you consider how the Mahabharata describes Vimana battles with weapons that sound eerily like lasers or plasma beams, the line between myth and memory blurs further. Perhaps the most compelling angle lies in cross-cultural comparisons. The Vimana narratives mirror Sumerian tales of the Anunnaki sky-borne vehicles, the flying shields of medieval Europe, even the celestial barges of Egyptian lore. When isolated, each account could be written off as creative storytelling, but together they form a mosaic of eerily similar encounters, suggesting either a shared human fascination with flight or something far more profound. Whether vimanas were the product of advanced ancient science, extraterrestrial visitation, or simply the boundless imagination of our ancestors, one thing's certain: these texts and carvings challenge us to rethink the boundaries of history. And that's the real wonder, not just what they describe, but why these ideas resonate so deeply across time and space. The Madonna with Saint Giovannino isn't the only medieval painting that makes you do a double take. Hanging in the Palazzo Vecchio in Florence, this 15th-century masterpiece shows the Virgin Mary cradling the infant Jesus, but it's the upper right corner that steals the show. There, hovering just above the horizon, a metallic disc glows with an unnatural light, its surface detailed with what looks like rivets or panels. Below it, a shepherd shields his eyes, his dog barking furiously at the sky. The artist didn't treat this object as a passing detail. They rendered it with deliberate precision, as if documenting something they'd witnessed firsthand. This isn't an isolated case. The Annunciation with Saint Emilius, painted by Carlo Crivelli in 1486, features a similar anomaly. A beam of light streaking from a swirling cloud, striking Mary's head with pinpoint accuracy. To modern eyes, it resembles a spotlight or even a directed energy beam. Art historians classify it as the Holy Spirit, often depicted as a dove or golden rays, but Crivelli's version feels starkly mechanical. Then there's the Crucifixion of Christ fresco in Kosovo's Visoki Dečani Monastery, where two peculiar capsule-shaped objects flank the cross, each occupied by a figure gripping what might be controls or steering mechanisms. So what are we really looking at? The conventional explanation leans on religious symbolism. Medieval artists used celestial imagery to represent divine intervention, and odd shapes might symbolize heavenly realms beyond human understanding. The metallic disc in The Madonna with Saint Giovannino, perhaps a stylized cloud or a symbolic eye of God. But if that's the case, why include the shepherd's visceral reaction? His posture isn't one of reverence, it's alarm. And why do so many of these objects mirror descriptions from modern UFO accounts: saucer-like crafts, glowing orbs, beams of concentrated light? Skeptics argue pareidolia, our tendency to see familiar patterns where none exist, is at play. After all, medieval artists weren't documenting reality with photographic accuracy. They worked within symbolic conventions. Yet some details defy easy dismissal. Take the 1626 painting, The Miracle of the Snow, by Marcellino da Panicale, which shows a formation of disc-shaped objects hovering over a crowd. Their arrangement isn't random, it's structured, almost strategic. And in Basel, Switzerland, a broadsheet from 1566 describes a mass sighting of black globes engaged in aerial combat, an event so widely witnessed it was recorded in the city's official records. Could these paintings capture actual aerial phenomena? Medieval chronicles are filled with accounts of sky spectacles, fiery wheels, floating cities, even battles between phantom ships in the clouds. Some historians attribute these to atmospheric oddities like sun dogs or ball lightning. But when paired with the artwork, a pattern emerges. Whatever people saw, they interpreted it through the lens of their time. A medieval monk might call it a heavenly sign, while today we'd reach for terms like UAP or extraterrestrial craft. Perhaps the most compelling clue lies in the artist's intent. These weren't doodles in the margins, they were central to the composition, often commissioned by the church. If these objects were pure invention, why risk heresy by deviating from accepted iconography? Unless, of course, the artists were depicting something they, or their patrons, believed was real. Whether divine or otherworldly, one thing's certain: these paintings challenge us to reconsider what medieval Europeans might have witnessed in their skies. And that's the real mystery, not just what's on the canvas, but what inspired it in the first place. High in the mesas of the American Southwest, the Hopi people tell stories of the Cachinas, spiritual beings who descended from the sky in glowing vessels, bringing wisdom and warnings to humanity. Their petroglyphs, carved into sandstone cliffs centuries ago, depict these visitors with haunting clarity. Elongated figures with bulbous heads, their limbs outstretched as if mid-flight, surrounded by radiating lines that suggest energy or motion. To the untrained eye, they might resemble stylized spirits or shamanic visions. But to those who have listened to the elders, these images tell a different tale, one of the star people, celestial teachers who walked among them long before history began. The parallels to modern UFO encounters are startling. Hopi oral traditions describe the Cachinas arriving in flying shields, vessels that hummed like bees in a hive, leaving burns on the rocks where they landed. Witnesses today report eerily similar details: disc-shaped crafts emitting low-frequency vibrations, landing sites scorched in perfect circles. Even more striking, the Hopi speak of ant people, subterranean beings who sheltered humanity during cataclysms, their descriptions mirroring modern accounts of greys, small, large-eyed entities with slender frames. Coincidence, or could these petroglyphs be a bridge between ancient lore and contemporary sightings? Compare these stories to those of the Lakota, who revered the Tesson Win, the white buffalo calf woman, a celestial being who gifted them sacred rituals before vanishing into the sky in a whirlwind of light. Their cave paintings show her alongside strange, floating orbs, a motif echoed in the rock art of the Chumash people along the California coast. There, spiral-shaped figures hover above human forms, connected by wavy lines that some interpret as beams of energy. Archaeologists call them rain symbols, but tribal elders whisper of sky messengers who traveled on threads of lightning. Then there's the Zuni tribe's account of the Ahayu, Da, twin warrior gods who arrived in a thunderous sky canoe, their weapons capable of leveling mountains. Modern ufologists can't help but notice the resemblance to military pilots' descriptions of unidentified crafts performing impossible maneuvers, sudden stops, right-angle turns, bursts of blinding light. Even the Navajo's Yayitzo, a towering, armored figure said to stalk the desert, finds its counterpart in today's reports of men in black or robotic entities seen near UFO hotspots. What's most compelling isn't just the consistency of these accounts, but their cultural weight. These aren't campfire tales, they're sacred narratives preserved through generations with ritual precision. The Hopi's Prophecy Rock, for instance, depicts a time when the blue star Kachina would return, signaling a period of upheaval before a new age dawns. It's hard not to draw parallels to contemporary fears or hopes of extraterrestrial intervention in humanity's crises. Are these stories merely metaphors for cosmic cycles, or could they be prophecies waiting to unfold? The answer might lie in the art itself. Unlike European cave paintings, which focus on hunting scenes or fertility symbols, Native American petroglyphs often prioritize celestial imagery, constellations, comets, and beings that defy earthly anatomy. At Utah's Barrier Canyon, thousand-year-old pictographs show towering, antennaed figures with hollow eyes, their arms raised as if in greeting or warning. Nearby, the Sego Canyon panels feature similar entities, their torsos striped like modern depictions of astronauts in reflective suits. Mainstream anthropology often frames these as symbolic representations of spiritual journeys or hallucinogenic visions. But when you sit with tribal historians, their interpretations carry a different weight. They speak of these images not as abstractions, but as records, literal portraits of encounters with beings from beyond our world. And in a world where governments now admit to tracking unidentified aerial phenomena, it's worth asking who documented them first. The Hopi, the Lakota, and their ancestors might have been the original ufologists, their art the first alien evidence ever recorded. Whether divine messengers or interstellar travelers, one thing's clear: these stories and symbols challenge us to listen, not just with the tools of science, but with the humility to consider that ancient eyes might have seen truths we're only beginning to acknowledge. Buried in the tombs of ancient Chinese emperors, jade discs rest silently, perfect circles with a hole at their center, their surfaces polished to an otherworldly sheen. Archaeologists date some of these artifacts back over 5,000 years, long before metal tools existed to carve such precise shapes. So how did Neolithic cultures achieve such flawless symmetry? And why were these discs considered so sacred that they accompanied rulers into the afterlife? The mystery deepens when you examine their design. Standard discs are uniform in thickness, their edges razor straight, the central hole drilled with mathematical precision. But some, like the legendary Kongbai from the Liangzhu culture, feature intricate carvings that spiral outward, patterns eerily reminiscent of modern data storage devices or even celestial maps. Mainstream scholars suggest they symbolize the heavens, with the hole representing a portal between earth and sky. Yet alternative researchers point to their uncanny resemblance to piezoelectric crystals, materials that, when mechanically stressed, generate electricity. Could these discs have functioned as ancient energy conduits or even communication devices? Then there's the legend of the Yellow Emperor Huangdi, said to have ascended to the stars in a fiery chariot after gifting humanity advanced knowledge. Ancient texts describe him possessing 9 cauldrons and a divine pearl, objects some speculate were technological artifacts, not mythical treasures. Notably, discs were often placed on the chests of the deceased, aligned with the heart. Was this purely ritualistic, or could there have been a functional purpose akin to how modern devices interface with the body? Compare these discs to similar artifacts across Asia. The Hongshan culture's pig-dragon jades, shaped like coiled serpents, bear strange markings that resemble circuitry when magnified. Even more puzzling, some discs emit faint ultrasonic frequencies when struck, a property seen in quartz used today for radios and sonar. The Maya, halfway across the world, crafted similar jade pendants with helical grooves, buried with their kings as spirit communicators. The most compelling theory comes from the disc's material itself. Jade, particularly nephrite, contains high levels of iron and other metals. Under specific conditions, it can act as a semiconductor. While mainstream archaeology dismisses the idea of ancient technology, experiments show that stacked discs, when rotated, produce measurable electromagnetic fields. Coincidence, or could these have been components of a larger, now lost system? Perhaps the answer lies not in choosing between ritual and technology, but in recognizing how seamlessly the ancients blended the two. To them, the boundary between science and spirituality may have been invisible. Whether celestial maps, energy tools, or simply symbols of cosmic harmony, these jade circles challenge us to reconsider what advanced truly means and how much wisdom might still be locked within their silent, gleaming surfaces. Deep in the mountains of Tibet, a discovery in 1938 sent shockwaves through archaeology, or so the story goes. Chinese archaeologist Kai Pute reportedly unearthed a series of stone discs in a remote cave near the border of China and Tibet. These weren't ordinary artifacts. Known as the Dropa stones, they were said to be intricately grooved, with tiny hieroglyphs spiraling from their centers like the grooves of a vinyl record. But the real shock came when researchers allegedly decoded the inscriptions, revealing an account so startling it defied belief. The discs told of a crashed spacecraft and its stranded occupants, small, large-headed beings who called themselves the Dropa. Mainstream archaeology dismisses the entire narrative as a hoax, and for good reason. No credible academic institution has ever examined the stones, and Kai Pute's existence remains unverified. The original discs have never been displayed in a museum or subjected to peer-reviewed analysis. Yet the legend persists, fueled by grainy photographs and claims that Russian scientists in the 1960s analyzed the stones, finding they contained high levels of cobalt and other metals arranged in a way that suggested artificial manipulation. Skeptics counter that the metals could occur naturally in certain mineral formations, and the hieroglyphs might simply be erosion patterns or tool marks. Then there's the story of the Dropa people themselves. Locals in the region supposedly recounted legends of small, frail ancestors who descended from the clouds long ago, their origins lost to time. Some ufologists point to this as corroboration and oral tradition mirroring the stone's alleged message. But anthropologists note that Tibet's folklore is rich with tales of celestial beings, none of which require extraterrestrial explanations. The Dropa, they argue, could easily be a cultural memory of an isolated tribe or even symbolic figures representing spiritual concepts. What makes the Dropa stones so enduring isn't just the mystery, but the questions they force us to confront. Why do these kinds of stories, artifacts hinting at lost civilizations or otherworldly contact, recur across cultures? From the Antikythera mechanism's advanced gearing to the Baghdad battery's puzzling design, humanity's past is littered with objects that seem to defy their time. The Dropa stones might be a modern myth, but they tap into a deeper fascination, the possibility that history isn't as linear as we've been taught. Perhaps the most compelling angle isn't whether the stones are real, but why they captivate us. In an age where space exploration and UFO disclosures dominate headlines, the idea that our ancestors might have left us clues feels tantalizing. Whether the Dropa stones are elaborate fakes or misunderstood relics, they challenge us to keep questioning, to keep looking, because sometimes the line between myth and reality is thinner than we think. Easter Island's towering Moai statues stand like silent sentinels, their hollow eyes gazing across the Pacific. Carved from volcanic rock, some weighing over 80 tons, these monoliths raise a question that's puzzled researchers for centuries. How could a small, isolated society with no metal tools or wheels quarry, transport, and erect such colossal figures? The official explanation credits Polynesian settlers with remarkable ingenuity, using ropes, sledges, and sheer manpower to move the statues miles across rugged terrain. But when you examine the logistics, the numbers don't quite add up. Take the largest Moai, El Gigante, unfinished but estimated to weigh nearly 200 tons. To put that in perspective, it's heavier than a blue whale. Even with hundreds of workers, moving something of that scale without modern machinery seems almost supernatural. And then there's the precision. The statue's bases were carved to fit perfectly into stone platforms called ahu, some so exact that you couldn't slip a sheet of paper between them. This level of craftsmanship suggests engineering knowledge that rivals modern techniques. This is where alternative theories take flight. Some point to the Rapa Nui people's own oral traditions, which speak of the Moai walking to their destinations, a detail that, to some, hints at lost technology or even extraterrestrial assistance. Ancient astronaut theorists argue the statue's elongated heads and stylized features resemble descriptions of star beings from other cultures, the most controversial claim. That the island's famous petroglyphs depicting humanoid figures with large eyes and domed heads might represent actual encounters with otherworldly visitors who shared advanced knowledge. But mainstream archaeologists have a different take. Recent experiments show how teams using simple ropes could rock the statues forward in a walking motion, aligning with indigenous stories. And the petroglyphs, they likely symbolize ancestral spirits or deities, common in Polynesian art. Even the Ahu platforms have practical explanations. Their precision stems from generations of trial and error, not alien blueprints. The debate boils down to perspective. Is it more far-fetched to imagine ancient humans achieving such feats through innovation and communal effort, or to invoke extraterrestrial intervention? Perhaps the truth lies in recognizing the Rapa Nui's underestimated brilliance. Their society thrived in one of the planet's most remote corners, adapting to harsh conditions with creativity that still leaves us in awe. Whether the Moai were born of human hands or cosmic influence, their silent presence remains a testament to the mysteries we've yet to fully unravel. Digging through the ancient soil of Ecuador's Valdivia region, archaeologists uncovered a collection of small, enigmatic figurines, smooth, curved bodies with oversized, helmet-like heads and exaggerated goggle-shaped eyes. Dating back over 4,000 years, these artifacts seem almost playful at first glance until you notice the uncanny details. The torsos are segmented, as if clad in some form of protective suit, while the limbs appear rigid, almost mechanical. To some researchers, these aren't just stylized human forms, they're eerily reminiscent of modern astronauts. The Valdivia culture left no written records, so interpreting these figurines relies on context. Mainstream archaeology classifies them as fertility symbols or ritual objects, pointing to their exaggerated hips and breasts as evidence. But the helmet theory gains traction when you compare them to similar artifacts across the Americas. In Mexico, the Olmec baby face figurines share those same elongated skulls and wide, hollow eyes, while in Colombia, the San Agustin culture carved statues with what look like breathing apparatuses strapped to their faces. Even more striking, some Valdivia pieces feature what could be straps or harnesses across the chest, a detail that feels less like artistic flair and more like functional design. Skeptics argue that attributing these features to spacesuits is a classic case of seeing what you want to see. After all, ancient artists often abstracted human forms for symbolic or aesthetic reasons. The goggles might represent tears or face paint, the helmets elaborate headdresses for rituals, yet the consistency across cultures raises questions. Why do so many pre-Columbian civilizations with no contact depict figures with nearly identical otherworldly traits? Then there's the matter of the Valdivia's own legends. While their oral traditions have faded, neighboring tribes like the Canare speak of celestial beings who descended in shining discs, bringing knowledge of agriculture and astronomy. Could the figurines be tangible echoes of these stories? Or consider the Tarona people of Colombia, whose gold pendants depict figures with elongated limbs and antennae like protrusions, objects later found to resonate at specific frequencies when struck, suggesting a purpose beyond ornamentation. The debate intensifies when you examine the craftsmanship. The Valdivia figurines weren't crude doodles, they were meticulously shaped, often polished to a mirror-like finish. The precision in the helmet ridges and visor indentations implies intentionality. Were these artists capturing something they'd witnessed, or were they encoding myth into clay? One intriguing clue lies in their placement. Many were buried in ceremonial pits alongside shells and stones arranged in celestial patterns, hinting at a connection to the cosmos. Perhaps the most compelling argument comes from modern parallels. Compare these ancient figurines to mid-century sci-fi depictions of astronauts' bulky suits, rounded helmets, visors obscuring the face. The resemblance is undeniable, but which way does the influence flow? Did ancient artists foresee the future, or did modern designers unknowingly echo an archetype buried deep in humanity's collective memory? Whether sacred symbols or snapshots of encounters, these artifacts challenge us to reconsider the boundaries between imagination and memory, and whether the line between them was ever truly clear. Swiss author Erich von Däniken didn't just speculate about ancient aliens, he ignited a global conversation that still burns decades later. His 1968 book, Chariots of the Gods, shattered conventional thinking, proposing that humanity's oldest artworks weren't just myth or imagination, but literal records of extraterrestrial visitors. Imagine opening a dusty tome and discovering what von Däniken saw: Egyptian hieroglyphs resembling helicopters, Mayan carvings of figures hunched over control panels, biblical tales of fiery chariots descending from the sky. To him, these weren't symbols or coincidences, they were proof. Von Däniken's argument hinges on a bold premise: ancient civilizations, separated by continents and millennia, couldn't have independently dreamed up such strikingly similar gods unless they were describing real beings. Take the Dogon's knowledge of Sirius B, a star invisible without telescopes, or the Nazca Lines, sprawling runways visible only from the air. His conclusion: advanced extraterrestrials intervened in human history, jump-starting our progress with technology that seemed like magic to primitive eyes. Critics dismissed him as a fantasist, but millions of readers devoured his work, sparking a movement that redefined how we view ancient art. The backlash was fierce. Academics accused him of cherry-picking evidence, ignoring cultural context, and forcing modern interpretations onto sacred symbols. The helicopter hieroglyphs at Abydos, palimpsests, they argued, eroded carvings rewritten over time. The vimanas of Hindu texts, poetic metaphors, not flight manuals. Yet von Däniken's legacy isn't just about being right or wrong. It's about the questions he forced us to ask. Why do so many cultures depict star beings with eerie consistency? How did the Maya calculate Venus's orbit with such precision? His theories, however contested, dragged archaeology out of its comfort zone and into the realm of cosmic possibility. What makes Chariots of the Gods endure isn't just its audacity, but its timing. Published at the dawn of the space age, it tapped into humanity's growing obsession with the stars. If we could land on the moon, why couldn't others have visited us first? The book's ripple effect is undeniable, inspiring TV shows like Ancient Aliens, fueling decades of research, even influencing declassified government reports on UFOs. Love him or loathe him, von Däniken turned ancient art into a puzzle we're still piecing together. And in that sense, his greatest contribution might be this: he taught us to look at the past not as a closed book, but as a mystery waiting to be reread. For every ancient carving or painting that sparks theories of otherworldly visitors, mainstream scholars offer a grounded alternative, one rooted in human ingenuity, not extraterrestrial intervention. Take the so-called astronaut carvings of Palenque or the Tassili cave figures. Archaeologists point out that elongated skulls were a cultural practice in many societies, from the Maya to the ancient Egyptians, achieved through head binding in infancy. Those bulbous-eyed Tassili beings, they align with traditional shamanic imagery, where altered states of consciousness induced by rituals or plant medicines inspired visions of distorted, supernatural entities. Even the Wandjina's missing mouths find explanation in Aboriginal lore, their silent spirits, their power too great for speech. The argument against ancient alien interpretations hinges on context. Art never exists in a vacuum. It's shaped by the beliefs, technologies, and daily lives of its creators. The Nazca Lines, for instance, mirror patterns found in Andean textiles and pottery, suggesting they were part of a broader artistic tradition, not signals to the stars. As for their precision, experiments by researchers like National Geographic's Jared Diamond demonstrate how simple tools and teamwork could achieve those geometric marvels. The helicopter hieroglyphs at Abydos. Over time, pharaohs would recarve inscriptions, layering new text over old, weathering exposed fragments of both, creating accidental mashups that resemble modern machines, a far cry from deliberate depictions of technology. Skeptics also highlight a critical flaw in the alien theory, its tendency to underestimate ancient cultures. Suggesting that the moai or pyramids required extraterrestrial help dismisses the brilliance of societies that observed celestial cycles, engineered complex tools, and passed down precise knowledge through generations. The Dogon's Sirius lore, for example, might trace back to contact with European astronomers during colonialism, not star-born beings, and the vimanas' advanced weapons. Hindu epics are rich with metaphorical language. Fiery arrows could symbolize comets, not missiles. Perhaps the most damning critique is the selective use of evidence. Ancient astronaut theorists often spotlight anomalies while ignoring mountains of data that explain them conventionally. The Baghdad battery, once touted as proof of ancient electricity, likely stored scrolls or incense. Tests show it couldn't generate meaningful current. The Dropa stones, no reputable institution has verified their existence, and the translated text contradicts known Himalayan scripts. Even von Däniken later admitted to fabricating some claims, undermining his credibility. Yet the debate isn't just about facts, it's about perspective. Scholars argue that attributing ancient achievements to aliens strips them of their humanity, reducing vibrant cultures to passive recipients of cosmic charity. The Maya tracked Venus not because aliens taught them, but because they were meticulous astronomers who spent centuries refining their calendars. The moai walked because ingenious engineers devised a way to move them, not because otherworldly beings lent a hand. In this light, ancient art becomes even more awe-inspiring, a testament to what humans alone can imagine, create, and memorialize in stone. That's the heart of the conflict. One side sees mysteries begging for extraterrestrial answers. The other sees mysteries solved by digging deeper into human history. Both agree on one thing: the past holds wonders we're still unraveling. The real question is whether we credit those wonders to the stars, or to the astonishing minds that gazed up at them long before us. Ancient art rarely speaks in literal terms. It whispers in symbols, metaphors, and sacred geometry. When we encounter those wide-eyed figures with elongated skulls or hovering disc-shaped objects, the immediate assumption might be aliens. But step back and another possibility emerges. These could be visual metaphors for forces beyond human comprehension. Consider the Egyptian god Horus, depicted with a falcon's head, not because ancient Egyptians believed in bird-headed deities, but because the falcon symbolized celestial vision and kingship. Similarly, the Tassili cave paintings' towering, alien figures might represent spirits or ancestors, their exaggerated features signaling supernatural power rather than extraterrestrial biology. Take the recurring motif of halos or radiant crowns in ancient art. In Christian iconography, saints glow with golden rings to signify divinity, while Buddhist thankas show enlightened beings encircled by flames of wisdom. The Wandjina's glowing headdresses could follow the same symbolic logic, marking these figures as otherworldly without implying they were literal visitors from space. Even the so-called antennae on Sumerian cylinder seals could be stylized representations of divine radiance, akin to the rays emanating from Mesopotamian sun gods. Across cultures, artists used visual shorthand to convey the sacred, often distorting human forms to express transcendence. Then there's the role of altered states. Shamanic rituals involving hallucinogenic plants or rhythmic drumming could explain many alien depictions. The San people of southern Africa painted trance experiences where humans morph into part animal beings, their bodies elongated and floating visions that mirror modern descriptions of alien abductions. Similarly, Mayan priests consuming sacred mushrooms might have interpreted their visions as journeys to the stars, later carving those experiences into temple walls. When a culture lacks the vocabulary for psychedelic experiences, art becomes the only language to describe the indescribable. Nature itself offers another layer of interpretation. The Aztec feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl didn't need to be a spacecraft. It embodied wind and storm, its undulating form echoing weather patterns. Norse myths described the aurora borealis as the armor of Valkyries. Aboriginal Australians saw the Milky Way as a river of ancestral spirits. Could the celestial chariots of ancient texts simply be poetic descriptions of comets or meteor showers? The vimanas, thunderous roars, might record volcanic eruptions, while the fiery wheels of medieval chronicles could depict solar halos, rare atmospheric phenomena where the sun appears ringed by glowing disks. Yet symbolism and reality aren't always opposites. The Dogon's Sirius lore might blend astronomical observation with myth, a way to encode celestial knowledge in memorable stories. The Nazca Lines could be both ritual pathways and alignments with solstice sunrises, serving dual purposes. Ancient artists might not have distinguished between literal and symbolic the way we do. To them, a depicted sky god could simultaneously represent a cosmic force, an ancestor's spirit, and a physical being. This fluidity challenges our modern either-or thinking. The key is context. A medieval painting of a glowing disk gains different meaning when we learn it's part of an Annunciation scene, where divine light conventionally represents the Holy Spirit. The Mayan sarcophagus lid's spaceship imagery aligns with underworld journey myths, where kings navigated spiritual realms. Without understanding an artist's cultural framework, we risk superimposing our own obsessions, like UFOs, onto their intent. That's the delicate balance. While some ancient art could document extraordinary encounters, most reflects humanity's timeless urge to make sense of the unseen. Whether through gods, spirits, or celestial metaphors, our ancestors sought to bridge the gap between the earthly and the infinite. And perhaps that's the real mystery, not whether they painted aliens, but how they channeled wonder itself into stone and pigment, leaving us puzzles that still ignite our imagination. What if the so-called alien figures in ancient art weren't visitors from another world, but remnants of a forgotten chapter in humanity's own story? One where advanced technology and scientific understanding flourished long before we thought possible. Consider the Antikythera mechanism, a 2,000-year-old bronze device discovered in a Greek shipwreck. With its intricate gears and dials, it could predict lunar eclipses and track planetary movements, an analog computer centuries ahead of its time. If such sophistication existed in the classical world, what other leaps might earlier cultures have achieved, only to have their knowledge erased by time? Take the Saqqara bird, a wooden artifact from Egypt's 3rd century BCE. With its aerodynamic wings and curved tail fin, it bears an uncanny resemblance to a modern glider. Mainstream archaeology labels it a ceremonial object or child's toy, but reconstructions show it's capable of stable flight when tossed. Could it be a scaled-down model of larger, functional aircraft? Ancient Indian texts like the Samarangana Sutradhara describe vimanas with design specifics: mercury vortex engines, insulated cabins, even propulsion resistant to wind shear. These details read less like myth and more like engineering principles, hinting at a possible tradition of flight predating the Wright brothers by millennia. Then there's the mystery of vitrified fort structures across Europe and India, where stone walls have been fused into glass by extreme heat. Conventional theories blame wildfires or lightning, but the temperatures required over 1,000 degrees Celsius, and the localized patterns suggest something more deliberate. Ancient Greek historian Herodotus wrote of the mythical Archimedes' death ray, a mirror array that concentrated sunlight to set enemy ships ablaze. While dismissed as legend, modern experiments at MIT proved the concept feasible. Could vitrified forts be evidence of similar lost technology, perhaps weapons or energy systems we no longer understand? The Baghdad battery is another enigma. a clay jar containing a copper cylinder and iron rod. It dates to the Parthian era around 2,000 years ago. Filled with an acidic electrolyte like vinegar, it can produce a small electric current. Skeptics argue it's too weak for practical use, maybe a storage vessel for sacred scrolls. But stack multiple jars together and suddenly you have a functional battery. Electroplating gold onto jewelry or medical tools like the famed Zarawi's cautery would require precisely this kind of power. Were these devices remnants of a medical or industrial technology later forgotten? Even the Great Pyramids challenge our timeline. The precision of their alignment to true north, the mathematical encoding of Earth's dimensions in their proportions, the way inner chambers amplify specific electromagnetic frequencies, these aren't just feats of brute labor. They suggest a grasp of geophysics, harmonics, and astronomy we typically associate with modern science. The ancient builders might not have had microchips, but their knowledge of celestial mechanics and structural engineering could have been far more advanced than we credit. So where did this wisdom go? Cataclysms like the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis or the collapse of the Bronze Age civilizations could have fractured technological continuity. Oral traditions and artisan guilds might have preserved fragments, but over centuries, practical knowledge devolved into ritual or myth. The gods depicted in art, those towering figures with strange implements, could have been human innovators, their tools and devices so extraordinary that later generations remembered them as divine. This perspective doesn't just rewrite history, it restores agency to our ancestors. Instead of crediting aliens for their achievements, we're forced to reckon with the vast silences in the archaeological record. Maybe the truth isn't that extraterrestrials walked among us, but that humanity's potential has always been greater than we dared to imagine. And if that's the case, what other forgotten breakthroughs might still lie buried, waiting to shift our understanding of the past? The Annunciation with Saint Emilius isn't just a masterpiece of Renaissance art, it's a canvas that blurs the line between the divine and the unexplained. Painted by Carlo Crivelli in 1486, the scene shows the Archangel Gabriel appearing before Mary, but the focal point isn't just the figures. A piercing beam of golden light streams from a swirling, disc-shaped cloud, striking Mary's forehead with surgical precision. To the faithful, this is the Holy Spirit, symbolized as a dove or radiant light in countless other works. But to modern eyes, that beam looks less like a spiritual symbol and more like a focused energy source, something almost technological in its clarity. This tension between sacred imagery and potential extraterrestrial interpretation isn't unique to Crivelli. Across medieval and Renaissance Europe, artists depicted celestial phenomena with startling consistency. The 15th century painting, The Miracle of the Snow, shows a formation of luminous discs hovering over a crowd, their arrangement too deliberate to dismiss as random clouds. In The Baptism of Christ by Ert de Gelder, a beam of light descends from a saucer-shaped object, illuminating John the Baptist and Jesus in a scene that mirrors modern UFO encounter reports. Even earlier, the 12th century, Life of Mary manuscript illustrates the Virgin bathed in light from a hovering, wheel-like object, its spokes radiating like a spacecraft's thrusters. Religious scholars argue these motifs are purely symbolic artistic shorthand for divine presence. The golden rays in Crivelli's painting, for instance, align with biblical descriptions of God's glory shining round about. The discs and wheels, they echo Ezekiel's vision of heavenly chariots, which theologians interpret as metaphorical representations of God's majesty. But here's the complication. Many of these artworks include human observers reacting not with reverence but shock or fear. In The Madonna with Saint Giovannino, the shepherd shielding his eyes from the glowing disc overhead isn't kneeling in prayer, he's recoiling, his dog barking aggressively at the sky. If these were purely symbolic divine manifestations, why depict such visceral, almost confrontational responses? The debate intensifies when you consider the artist's intentions. These weren't amateur doodles, they were commissioned works, often for churches, created under the watchful eye of religious authorities. Deviating from accepted iconography risked accusations of heresy. Yet the consistency of these anomalous details suggests they weren't accidental. Could it be that artists were documenting actual aerial phenomena, interpreting them through a religious lens because no other framework existed? Medieval chronicles are filled with accounts of sky spectacles, fiery wheels, floating cities, even battles between luminous objects. The Nuremberg broadsheet of 1561 describes hundreds of spheres and crosses clashing in the sky, an event so widely witnessed it was recorded in official city records. Perhaps the most compelling middle ground lies in the intersection of spirituality and perception. When faced with the unexplainable, humans default to the vocabulary of their time. A medieval peasant witnessing a meteor might call it an angel's torch, just as a modern observer might label it a UFO. The glowing discs in religious art could represent both divine light and physical phenomena, a dual interpretation that wouldn't have seemed contradictory to the artist. After all, in a world where the line between miracle and natural event was porous, a strange light in the sky could easily be both a sign from God and a tangible, if mysterious, occurrence. This duality challenges us to rethink not just the art but the nature of historical testimony. When a Renaissance painter depicted a radiant disk hovering over a biblical scene, were they encoding a literal event into sacred symbolism? Or were they tapping into a deeper, almost universal archetype, the awe of something descending from the heavens, whether angelic or extraterrestrial? The answer might lie not in choosing one explanation over the other, but in recognizing how both can coexist, woven into the fabric of how humans make sense of the wondrous and the unknown. The intersection of ancient mysteries and modern imagination has sparked a vibrant movement among today's artists' visionaries who reimagine those enigmatic carvings and paintings through a sci-fi lens. Take Swiss painter H.R. Giger, whose biomechanical nightmares in Alien eerily mirror the elongated figures of Dogon cave art or the sinewy horrors of Mayan underworld carvings. His work doesn't just borrow from the past, it suggests a continuity, as if ancient artists glimpsed the same cosmic horrors he later channeled onto canvas. Then there's Android Jones, a digital artist whose psychedelic deities fuse Aboriginal dot painting with swirling nanotech, creating beings that could have stepped straight off a Sumerian cylinder seal or a UFO sighting. These creators aren't just making art, they're weaving a thread between millennia, asking if humanity's oldest symbols were always meant to be read as science fiction. Street artists like Never Crew take the conversation to city walls, painting towering astronaut figures adorned with pre-Columbian patterns, their helmets reflecting constellations once tracked by Inca astronomers. In Mexico City, muralist Senko reinterprets Aztec gods as interdimensional travelers, their feathered serpents now entangled with crystalline spacecraft. Even tattoo artists like Nico Hurtado ink sleeves that blend Egyptian hieroglyphs with sleek biomechanical armor, as if the pharaoh's skyboats were prototypes for future tech. What's striking isn't just the aesthetic fusion, it's the deliberate commentary. Each piece whispers the same provocative question: were our ancestors trying to tell us something we're only now equipped to understand? The trend extends beyond visual art. Musicians like Tool integrate Mayan numerology and alchemical sigils into album art, while filmmakers like Denis Villeneuve design Arrival's heptapod language with the same cryptic elegance as undeciphered ancient scripts. Even video games like Assassin's Creed Origins recreate Ptolemaic Egypt with painstaking accuracy, only to hint at alien artifacts buried beneath the pyramids. These creators aren't just recycling old motifs, they're resurrecting a dialogue cut short by time, treating ancient art not as relics but as fragments of a puzzle we're still assembling. Perhaps the most compelling works come from indigenous contemporary artists like Bunky Echo Hawk, whose paintings recast Native American figures in astronaut gear, their traditional regalia merging with space-age materials. His piece, Until the Stars Are in Our Bones, shows a Pawnee warrior astride a horse, both clad in star-mapped suits, a direct nod to tribal stories of celestial visitors. Similarly, Maori artist George Nuku carves plexiglass Wakapapa, ancestral figures with LED-lit eyes, blending Polynesian oral traditions with a neon futurism that feels both ancient and alien. These artists aren't appropriating, they're reclaiming. By merging ancestral narratives with modern tech, they assert that their cultures, star people, legends were never myths, they were prophecies. What unites these creators is a refusal to see ancient art as static. Instead, they treat it as a living, evolving conversation, one where the gods of old might just be waiting for us to catch up. Whether through brushstrokes or bass lines, they challenge us to reconsider those old cave walls and temple reliefs not as dead history, but as the first draft of a story we're still writing. And that's the real power of this movement. It doesn't just imagine a future where we meet extraterrestrials. It suggests we might have already known them all along. Modern technology is peeling back the layers of ancient art in ways our ancestors could never have imagined. Spectral imaging, a technique that captures light beyond the visible spectrum, has revealed hidden sketches beneath the surface of Renaissance paintings, preliminary outlines where artists experimented with compositions before committing to final brushstrokes. But what if these unseen layers hold more than just artistic revisions? When researchers scanned the 15th century painting The Baptism of Christ, they discovered faint, erased figures in the sky at disc-shaped forms that didn't make the final version. Were these early attempts to depict celestial phenomena later deemed too controversial to display? Three-dimensional modeling takes the investigation even deeper. By creating digital replicas of artifacts like the Palenque sarcophagus lid, scientists can manipulate lighting and angles to reveal details invisible to the naked eye. One such scan exposed precise tool marks on the Mayan carving, grooves so straight and uniform, they suggest the use of advanced cutting tools. Mainstream archaeology attributes this to meticulous handwork, but alternative researchers point to the impossibility of such precision with primitive chisels. Could these scans be uncovering traces of lost technology or even tools left behind by visitors from the stars? Then there's pigment analysis, where spectrometers break down the chemical composition of ancient paints. In the Tassili caves, tests showed that the ochre used to paint the towering, alien figures contained traces of an unusual mineral, one not native to the region. Some theorize it was brought from hundreds of miles away, while others wonder if it's a synthetic additive, hinting at knowledge beyond the era's capabilities. Even more intriguing, certain Egyptian blue pigments fluoresce under infrared light, a property modern science only rediscovered in the 20th century. Did the ancients understand optical physics in ways we're just beginning to grasp? One of the most groundbreaking tools is reflectance transformation imaging, which captures how light interacts with textured surfaces. When applied to the Nazca Lines, it revealed microscopic grooves aligned with celestial events, solstices, equinoxes, even the rising of specific stars. Traditional interpretations call these ritual pathways, but the data suggests something more, a massive, interactive astronomical calendar. The lines don't just point to the sky. Some sections reflect moonlight in patterns that could serve as signals. Were they meant to communicate with something or someone above? But technology has its limits. For every revelation, there are ambiguities. A 3D scan of the Sakara bird showed it could glide, but was that intentional or a fluke of its shape? Spectral imaging might uncover hidden layers, but without context, we're left guessing at their meaning. Science can tell us how these artworks were made, but not always why. The real challenge lies in balancing high-tech analysis with cultural insight, deciphering whether a strange figure is an alien, a shaman in trance, or simply an artist's whimsy. Perhaps the most compelling use of these tools is in cross-referencing artifacts. By digitizing cylinder seals from Mesopotamia and Valdivia figurines from Ecuador, researchers can compare their geometries down to the millimeter. The similarities in proportion, the elongated heads, the segmented limbs, are too exact to dismiss as coincidence. Whether these represent shared myths, convergent artistic styles, or something more extraordinary, technology is giving us the clearest view yet into the threads connecting ancient cultures. And as these tools evolve, who knows what secrets will pry from the past, or how they might reshape our understanding of humanity's place in the cosmos. In recent years, government disclosures about unidentified aerial phenomena have sent shockwaves through both scientific circles and popular culture. But could these official acknowledgments also shed new light on ancient artwork? When the United States Pentagon released those now famous Navy pilot videos in 2020, showing tic-tac-shaped objects performing maneuvers that defy known physics, it didn't just validate modern UFO sightings, it resurrected centuries-old questions. Suddenly, those swirling cave paintings of otherworldly beings, those temple carvings of flying chariots, didn't seem so far-fetched. If advanced aircraft are buzzing our skies today, who's to say they weren't soaring through ancient skies as well? Take the US government's 2021 preliminary report on UAPs, which admitted that over 140 military encounters couldn't be explained by conventional technology. The documented behaviors, sudden acceleration, hypersonic speeds without sonic booms, apparent transmedium travel between air and water, mirror descriptions from ancient texts. The Hindu vimanas were said to dive into oceans and emerge unscathed. Dogon legends speak of Namo beings arriving in vessels that moved like fish in water. Even Ezekiel's biblical vision of wheels within wheels that could turn in any direction without changing course reads like a Pentagon briefing transcript. The parallels are too consistent to dismiss as pure coincidence, but here's where it gets even more intriguing. Recent declassified documents, like those from France's Cometa report or Chile's Cephar, explicitly compare modern UAPs to historical accounts of celestial phenomena. One striking example is the US government's 2023 congressional hearing, where whistleblowers described recovered non-human craft with hieroglyphic-like markings. When independent researchers superimposed these alleged symbols onto Mesopotamian cylinder seals, the similarities were uncanny, spiral patterns and geometric clusters that matched depictions of godly technology. Could these be cultural echoes of the same phenomena now being documented by fighter jets? Mainstream historians urge caution, pointing out that governments have a long history of misidentifying natural phenomena, from weather balloons to atmospheric plasma. Yet the sheer volume of cross-referenced evidence is difficult to ignore. The UK's Project Condign report, though heavily redacted, noted that medieval accounts of sky spectacles often align with modern UAP hotspots. And when NASA's 2022 panel recommended using artificial intelligence to analyze historical art for potential UAP depictions, it wasn't fringe theorists cheering, it was astrophysicists. The implications ripple beyond mere validation. If governments now admit that unexplained aerial technology exists, ancient art transforms from speculative fantasy to potential documentary evidence. Those Renaissance paintings of glowing discs, could they be first-hand accounts of the same phenomena pilots are encountering today? The Mayan carvings of figures in cockpit-like structures, might they represent early attempts to depict what we now call non-human biologics? Even the Pentagon's recent shift in terminology from UFO to UAP reflects a broader acknowledgement. These phenomena aren't just objects, they're patterns recurring across millennia. Of course, skeptics argue that disclosure doesn't equal extraterrestrial proof. Advanced human technology, secret military projects, or even exotic natural phenomena could explain both ancient and modern sightings. But the real breakthrough lies in the shift of perspective. For the first time since von Däniken's controversial theories, the conversation has moved from the fringes to the halls of power, with ancient art as a silent witness. Whether these disclosures ultimately connect the dots or deepen the mystery, one thing's clear: humanity's oldest canvases might hold clues we're only now learning to read. And that changes everything. Hollywood has a way of rewriting history, or at least how we imagine it. When Indiana Jones cracked his whip in search of the Ark of the Covenant, or when Stargate depicted ancient Egyptian gods as interstellar travelers, these stories didn't just entertain, they seeped into our collective consciousness, reshaping how we interpret the artifacts left behind by real civilizations. Pop culture doesn't just reflect our fascination with ancient mysteries, it actively molds the lens through which we view them. A painted figure with elongated limbs in a prehistoric cave might have once been labeled a shaman or spirit. But after decades of sci-fi films depicting aliens with similar features, that same image now sparks whispers of extraterrestrial visitations. Consider the Ancient Aliens effect. The History Channel's hit series didn't invent the idea of sky-born visitors influencing human history, but it turbocharged the theory, packaging it with glossy reenactments and eerie soundtracks. Suddenly, the Mayan calendar wasn't just a complex timekeeping system, it became a countdown to alien return. The show's signature, could it be, questioning style turned speculation into a form of evidence, making the leap from artistic interpretation to cosmic conspiracy feel tantalizingly plausible. This isn't just harmless entertainment, it's altered how museums curate exhibits. Curators now field more questions about alien connections than the cultural or religious contexts of artifacts. When the Smithsonian displayed a pre-Columbian figurine with wide eyes and a domed head, social media erupted with claims it proved ancient astronaut theories, despite scholars explaining it represented a deity in ceremonial garb. Books have played an equally transformative role. Erich von Däniken's Chariots of the Gods read like a detective novel, weaving together artifacts from disparate cultures into a single proof of alien intervention. The book's success didn't just popularize the theory, it created a template for how we connect dots across time and space. Modern authors like Graham Hancock build on this, framing ancient monuments as remnants of lost high-tech societies. These narratives thrive because they tap into something primal, the thrill of uncovering a hidden truth that academia supposedly ignores. The irony. Many of these theories rely on the very artifacts archaeologists have spent centuries contextualizing, only to strip them of their original meaning, repurposing them as plot devices in a sci-fi saga. Even blockbuster films subtly rewrite history. Prometheus imagined the pyramids as alien landing sites, while Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen turned the Giza Plateau into a machine. These depictions don't just entertain, they reinforce the idea that ancient wonders are too advanced to be human-made. After The Fifth Element featured Egyptian hieroglyphs of spacecraft, online forums lit up with side-by-side comparisons of real carvings, proving filmmakers were in on the secret. Never mind that the movie's designers openly drew inspiration from existing art, the line between fiction and artifact blurred irreversibly. Yet pop culture's influence isn't purely reductive. It's also sparked a renaissance in public engagement with ancient history. Video games like Assassin's Creed Origins immerse players in meticulously recreated Ptolemaic Egypt, complete with historically accurate tools and architecture, even as they weave in sci-fi subplots about precursor civilizations. The result, a generation of gamers who can distinguish between a real faience amulet and a fictional piece of Eden, all while debating the ethics of historical representation. Similarly, podcasts like the Joe Rogan Experience bring archaeologists and fringe theorists to the same table, forcing audiences to weigh evidence against speculation. The tension between entertainment and education isn't new, but the stakes have shifted. When Ancient Aliens suggests the Nazca Lines were alien runways, it sidelines the indigenous communities who have protected these sites for millennia. When movies depict Moai statues as alien interfaces, it erases the Rapa Nui's remarkable engineering prowess. Pop culture thrives on mystery, but ancient art deserves more than to be reduced to a prop in someone else's fantasy. The challenge now, separating the thrill of what if from the rigor of what we know, while leaving room for both to coexist. After all, the real magic of these artifacts isn't just in the questions they raise, but in the human stories they've carried across centuries. And those stories deserve to be heard on their own terms, not just as footnotes in someone else's sci-fi script. Beneath the shifting sands of Egypt's western desert, ground-penetrating radar has revealed tantalizing anomalies, vast geometric shapes buried deep, their contours too precise to be natural formations. Could these be the ruins of a lost city mentioned in fragmentary texts, one said to house artifacts not of this earth? Meanwhile, in the jungles of Guatemala, lidar technology is exposing thousands of previously unknown Mayan structures, some adorned with carvings that early scans suggest depict figures in what look like pressurized suits. Archaeologists are tight-lipped, but leaked field notes describe a chamber sealed beneath El Mirador's main pyramid, its walls covered in murals of winged beings operating strange, levered devices. The ocean floors hold even greater potential. Off the coast of Japan, the Yonaguni monument step terraces and right-angle cuts have fueled debate for decades. Natural geology or remnants of a sunken civilization. Now, a joint Japanese-Korean expedition is preparing manned submersibles to explore newly identified structures nearby, rumored to bear tool marks and glyphs resembling those on the controversial Okinawa Rosetta Stone. And let's not forget the Baltic Sea anomaly, that eerie, disc-shaped object resting 60 meters down, which sonar scans show has stair-like formations and a surface that deflects sediment. Marine archaeologists dismiss it as a glacial deposit, but the team behind the upcoming Project Midnight claims their advanced imaging has detected metallic alloys arranged in patterns that mirror the Baghdad battery's internal components. Then there's the tech revolution in artifact analysis. At Oxford University, quantum magnetometers are being tested on sealed Egyptian sarcophagi, capable of detecting minute magnetic disturbances from hidden metal objects without opening them. Early trials on Tutankhamun's lesser-known Chamber of Shadows revealed anomalous readings near the wall frescoes, concentrations of rare earth metals in configurations that one physicist compared to primitive circuit boards. Meanwhile, in Turkey, researchers are applying AI pattern recognition to Göbekli Tepe's pillars, cross-referencing their symbols with global petroglyph databases. The algorithm flagged a recurring motif, a triangle with concentric circles found at sites from Easter Island to the caves of Bimbetka, its closest visual match. The radiation warning symbol designed in 1946. The most explosive revelations may come from where we least expect them. Vatican archivists recently digitized a 13th century manuscript describing heavenly chariots observed during the Albigensian Crusade, complete with sketches of tapered cylinders emitting columns of fire. Normally, such documents would remain locked away, but a leak to an independent research collective suggests the Church has been compiling similar accounts for centuries. A secret UAP archive predating the Pentagons by 800 years. And don't overlook Antarctica. Thermal scans of the continent's ice shelves have identified symmetrical structures beneath 2 kilometers of frost, their layout eerily reminiscent of Sumerian ziggurats. With ice-penetrating drones set to survey the site next summer, we might finally have answers about whether these are natural formations or evidence of a prehistoric civilization that thrived when Antarctica was green. What ties these disparate threads together is a single, electrifying possibility. We're on the brink of discoveries that could shatter our timeline of human history. Whether it's a mural depicting ancient astronauts tucked under a Guatemalan pyramid, or a submerged temple off Japan hiding technology we can't yet explain, each find has the potential to rewrite the story of our past. The tools to uncover these secrets now exist. The only question is what we'll do when the artifacts we unearth defy every textbook. Will we dismiss them as anomalies or finally accept that the ancients might have been trying to tell us something all along? One thing's certain, the next decade of archaeology won't just be digging up the past, it'll be decoding a message left for our time. From the haunting Wandjina spirits of Australia to the intricate vimana blueprints of ancient India, the evidence, or perhaps the tantalizing hint, stretches across time and geography. These artworks, dismissed for centuries as myth or imagination, now challenge us to reconsider. Were our ancestors documenting encounters with beings from beyond our world, or were they translating the inexplicable into the only language they knew? The Dogon's celestial knowledge, the precision of the Nazca Lines, the uncanny similarities between Sumerian seals and modern UFO descriptions, each piece of the puzzle invites both wonder and skepticism. It's easy to see why the ancient astronaut theory captivates so many. The idea that advanced visitors shaped human history offers a thrilling narrative, one that bridges the gaps in our understanding of megalithic engineering, lost technologies, and the eerie consistency of sky god legends. But here's the catch: fascination shouldn't eclipse scrutiny. For every carving that seems to depict a spacesuit, archaeologists offer earthly explanations, ritual headdresses, shamanic visions, or the human brain's knack for finding patterns in ambiguity. The Baghdad battery might not have powered ancient gadgets, and the Dropa stones could well be an elaborate hoax. Yet even skeptics must admit, the sheer volume of these anomalies demands curiosity, not dismissal. So where does that leave us? Somewhere between starry-eyed belief and rigid denial. The truth, as it often does, might lie in the nuances. Maybe the gods of old were neither aliens nor pure fiction, but a complex interplay of observed phenomena, cultural memory, and human ingenuity. The Nazca Lines could be both sacred pathways and celestial markers. Pakal sarcophagus might symbolize a spiritual journey and echo forgotten technology. Ancient art, after all, rarely fits into neat categories. It's a mirror reflecting our ancestors' awe, fear, and relentless quest to explain the unknown. What's undeniable is the conversation itself. Whether you're convinced by von Däniken's theories or side with mainstream archaeology, these artifacts spark something vital. A dialogue about humanity's past and, by extension, our future. If there's one takeaway, it's this: keep questioning. Dive into the Dogon star maps, study the Tassili cave paintings, or scrutinize those medieval UFO-like paintings. Share what you find in the comments below, because every perspective adds another brushstroke to the bigger picture. After all, history isn't just a record of what we know, it's an invitation to explore what we don't. And who knows, the next clue might be hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone like you to connect the dots.